YouTube, what's going on, guys? So, as I think about this stuff, man, as I think about the state of where people are at in their life, um, and, you know, and if I make this, um, black and white, not race infused, but if I make this clear as day and we're not reading between the lines, but we're just reading what's on the lines, we got to always remember, and I think people get caught up in stuff. They get caught up in titles. People get caught up in how much they're making or not making. People get caught up in roles of responsibilities of work. People get caught up in, having the next thing, you know, having a lot of materialistic items. Like we we get caught up in all that, and a lot of times forget to understand what quality of life really means, what being comfortable really means, what living at or below means. you know, like we just get caught up in day to day, and a lot of us are never thinking about the most forward picture, right? And I'm always talking about work. I'm always talking about people not having, enough of retirement, because if you think about it, dude, like at least the American culture, right? Some companies, right? Some entities directly push you. You work this hard or you fail, and some sprinkle it indirectly, right? They give you these benefits, right? They talk about 401k match, right? They talk about, hey, it's PTO. It's not accrued. You can start off with 3 or 4 weeks, and that PTO grows depending on your tenure, right? Like, so there is direct and indirect pressures for committing your life to work, committing your life to work, indirect and direct pressures from an employer to an employee. And then there's these indirect and direct pressures outside of work. Friends want you to do certain things, go on trips, right? Spend money for them. Family wants you to do certain things, right? The same thing, you want to live a certain way. You want to have a house. You want to have a nice apartment, right? You want to have a family. It costs to have kids, right? It costs to have dependents. Dependents are liabilities, right? You want to have cars. Cars are liabilities, you know? Like you want to put your money everywhere and anywhere you can to assume a certain lifestyle, and it doesn't end up always being enough for some reason. I can look at people and I don't truly believe they're happy or content, no matter if they're making enough money or a ton of money. They're like, there's always this race to get more, right? At least mentally, we need to get more. We gotta obtain more, right? If I could just make $200,000 a year, or if I could just buy, this 10th rental property, or if I could just pass the certification, right? Or if I could just get to this VP role, you know, there is, walk this way against the sun. There's always a means of either self competition, which is always bad, but you can get absorbed, right, in being greedy, or not being humble, or feeling that you're not doing enough, right? And then there's this there's this man, I'm trying to get some good light. There's this energy that you have to, you know, be competitive to the next person, you know, and gotta compete and got to be the best, right? Got to have the best. There's some people who get self-absorbed in that too, right? Well, keeping up with the Jones, in a sense, you know, whether they have it or not. And it's even worse when you think you have something or you think you are something and you're lying to the next person because you're ultimately lying to yourself, you know, because it doesn't really matter what someone else is doing in their life. And that's what gets people screwed up. We can't figure out what we want to do in our life, right? It's good to hear people out. It's good to hear options. It's good to get consultations. It's good to get advice, suggestions. Ultimately, unless there's a gun to your head, right? A physical gun to your head, you make your own decisions. But people are living with a proverbial or a figurative gun to their head, and they can't make their own decisions, right? They can't, i.e., they don't become happy, right? Someone else is telling them don't travel because another person is scared of taking a flight, or they feel that other person feel like, you know, that location you're going to isn't going to be suitable for you or what you're trying to do, right? Because that's what they think, and they put that on that other person. Another person would be like, hey, don't quit your job. Why you quitting your job? You know you got to make that money. You know you're not going to find something else. That gets into people's head. Another person would say, let's go to this certain spot. Like, I'm tired of going to the club, but you got a friend who loves going to the club every weekend, and you're burnt out from that. You don't see anything from that. You know what I'm saying? So like we do things, environmental factors, and environmental factors is really just people. People directly pressure us or directly pressure us or indirectly pressure us, right? So you get work pressures and you get out of work pressures, right? So professional pressures, right? Professional pressures and personal pressures, you know, and that keeps people stuck, man. That keeps people stuck, you know. So when I say people, Americans come from a culture of overconsumption, that's not just physical, that's not just materialistic, that's mentally, right? That's emotionally, right? We have a lot of this always in our ears. We overconsume people's thoughts, we overconsume people's emotions, right? Including overconsuming, you know, tangible items that screws up the bottom line. The goal is never about making a certain amount of money, and I've realized that. The goal is how you living with that money. The goal is, okay, how can we keep that money, right? How can we invest that money properly to assert a better living standard? Especially, and this is why I put my kind of, I guess, twang on it. Man, the light is kind of bad, y'all, sorry, right? How can I do that and work less or not work in a 9 to 5 situation? That's for me, right? But because you could work, if you're good with working 8 to 10 hours a day and that matches your standard of living, you could do whatever you want to do, and you have a goal that's going to get you to your self-actualization point that works for you, you know. But there's a lot of people who standardly just want to retire at 60, and because not only had they not had the means or opportunity to increase their income and remove their debt, right? They were over consuming things on the way. They were over consuming relationships. They were over consuming, right? Depreciating items, right? It's hard to over consume assets because that costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time to build to that, right? Time is our biggest asset, and that's what I want more of. So we have to remove the overconsumption of everything else, all right, that affects our ability to use our best asset, time, to take advantage of our best asset, our most valuable asset, time. You can't buy time. You could buy timeshares. You cannot buy time. And I keep realizing this shit day to day. And that's what screws me up. That's what forces me to always go back to the drawing board and replan things. Okay, am I really taking advantage of my time? I'm so time conscious. It bothers me to do a lot, maybe most things, because I'm like, I want time to live. Like, I just want time. I don't want time to keep trying to figure something out. I don't want time to try to keep going through relationships. I don't want time to try to keep figuring out how to get out of debt. I don't want time to keep figuring out what's the next job I need to work so I can keep my lights on. Like, that's crazy. I want time to walk. I want time to eat. I want time to play with my kids. You know, I want time to read with my kids, right? I want time to go out with my wife, and it doesn't matter the day or the time in that day, any week of the year. Like, I want all this time. I just give me more time, you know, and I can't go back in time, right? So, you know, I kick myself, you know, I'm now just kind of speaking personally, I kick myself in the ass a lot because it's like, man, you know, if I did this, I could have done this, you know? And that's always what lessons learned, you know? So it's like, okay, the goal, like really, what is my goal? What am I trying to ascertain? And it's just more time for myself. I just want flexibility. That comes with autonomy, and that comes on standing on what you believe in, you know? You know, like I'm at a point to where I feel like I'm getting some control, more control, you know? I feel like I'm getting there because I want time. And I manifest that shit, you know? I don't care my age. I don't have to wait a certain age to do that. I don't have to get to a certain income or tax bracket to do that. I have this big world and I have my will. I got to figure it out. I have options to figure shit out, you know? Ooh, this light is bad, y'all. My bad. Yeah, let me turn around. Turn around this way. Go out the other way. I got time to figure this out, man. Like, you always have time. You have more time than you think, and then sometimes you have less time than you think because you can't control everything, you know? So it's like there's a fine line, there's a fine balance, and that's where it's not black and white. You know, it's black and white to where, you know, people overconsume everything, right? People overconsume music, right? People overconsume food, right? Like, people overconsume drugs, medication, right? There's just a consumptuous behavior about humans that once we've, you know, kind of conquer that a bit, right? Make that a little bit more passive than aggressive. There's a lot of things we could accomplish within a shorter period of time. But the goal is to have flexibility and autonomy. That creates freedom. And I'm getting to the point where I'm really understanding what it means to, like, everything ties in. Get what I'm saying? I'm really getting to the point where now I understand now I understand what it means to when people say less is more. When you consume less, you have more time. It's just that's when you consume less work, you have more time. When you consume less food altogether, you have more time. You have more time to burn fat. You have more time to get in a state of ketosis, right? You're not always consuming food. You're not always consuming people's opinions, right? You have more time to keep your emotions intact. You have more time to figure out where you want to be academically, where you want to be socially, where you want to be spiritually, right? When you consume less of this kind of outside noise, like, you want to take advantage of life. And that's where you got total balance. Take advantage of life, have time for yourself to enjoy life, but know where to not consume so much. That really kind of only makes sense to me. So I'm hoping I'm making sense to y'all, right? I'm not coming on here and say, you know, stop buying clothes. Stop people over consuming clothes. Like, I don't have all that data. I'm not going that route. Like, I'm going more in the essence to where, you know, we indulge in a lot of things that we don't even need to be indulging, because at the end of the day, right, or at the end of those 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, right, relationships break over one conversation. You get fired or laid off from your job after 20 years, after one governmental change, and that now screws up your family, that now screws up your retirement plans. You know, like things happen where you just consume your time, consume your energy, your thoughts, right? Your gut. Like, you consume, and you find yourself in a rut at any age for anybody, right? Anywhere in the world, honestly, you know. But I am talking more on a basis because I am an American, right? I grew up in America. I was born in America, right? So, there is an overconsumptionist mindset because I've been at different places, right? Outside of America. And, you know, people have a different sense of living. They do. My wife was talking about this. We were talking about this yesterday. There's people in China and Thailand, right? There's people we see in the Dominican Republic. They open their doors when they want to. They close their doors when they want to. I'm talking, for consumer wise, right? Business wise, you know, ain't nobody rushing around to get to work, right? Ain't nobody doing all this stuff to be famous, like, or on a lower level to be liked by the next person. They're just figuring out their life, just doing what they want to do, right? It's a slower way of living in a lot of other places. There's a little bit of places like that in America, but I'm talking about America as a whole, dude. Like, we just consume. We do a lot, dog. We do a lot. And that always kicks ourselves in the ass because we're not thinking about the bigger picture ever, man. I have never been in a conversation, especially within work, to where someone is like, I am retiring at this age, right? I got this. And it's not a means of bragging, but I've never level set it with somebody and they're like, damn, dog, like, this is crazy, like, this is enough's enough, They're looking at life, I won't say necessarily spiritual, but they're looking at life like, we got the game messed up. Man, the lighting's bad, I'm sorry. We got the game messed up, So when I see people can start those conversations, okay, I know that they're locked in. Because people can have those conversations, they're locked in. But there's a lot of peons walking around, right? Not to be disrespectful, and a lot of bots and people who are just doing things just because they think they seem like, because they're told, hey, this is the way to go. I don't know. God's lighting ain't too bad, or it ain't that great. I'm moving around, sun's everywhere. So it's just my spiel, man. There's a lot of things that we indulge ourselves in all aspects of life, and the more we kind of cut back and just fine tune on our path, which isn't easy to do, but when we figure that shit out, and then we figure out, that time is really bliss, we'll start putting off a lot of stuff. We'll start selling a lot of stuff. We'll start moving from a lot of different people, from a lot of different environments, right? We start changing our way of living because less is more. Less consumption is more time. Peace.